BlogTalk Radio.
Welcome to Hell is for Children, a blog talk radio program for and by protective mothers with your host, Geerte Franken. So what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive father by many means necessary. Yes, you can call in. Are you ready? Operation Expose continues.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And the call-in number is 347-850-1243. And I would like to start thanking Bobby Biesinger from World Integrity News Network for providing us with this platform that allows anyone who has input on the topic of protective mothers and can think along with us towards solutions to have their voice heard. And today's guest is protective mother Jennifer Sisk, who has been going through a very challenging situation with both of her children. So let's see if Jennifer is on. Hi, Jennifer. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi. Welcome to Hell's for Children.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a privilege to just have the opportunity to share my story, and hopefully we can find a solution and not just be a part of the problem. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell me, how did you find yourself becoming a protective mother? You have 2 children, right?
I do. I do have 2 children. Many years ago, when you're young in your 20s and you're learning your different, experiences in life and about yourself. For some reason, I attracted the bad guy, the wrong kind of guy, and ended up in my son's father. I ended up with him, and he was very funny though, and but he was a drug dealer and very, very abusive. He turned out to be extremely abusive even during my pregnancy, and I'd never been in a situation like that. I didn't have the tools, or the knowledge of the warning signs like I do now, to know what a batterer looks like, or to notice the red flag. And all that to say, of course, he had a lot of money, so he would use that after he would abuse me and be like, hush, hush, money, or like, I'm sorry kind of thing. But I never felt good about it. It doesn't matter how much money you have if somebody's physically harming you and verbally. But, and he was a womanizer, too. So he was, I endured, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. So he would even kiss women in front of me. And it was pretty traumatic, and so I finally broke free of that, when the beatings were getting more intense and almost on a daily basis, and especially on this one trip, we went to Europe, and he took 3 different girls on each week. He took one girl one week, one girl another week, and then I was on the last week, but he was hitting me daily, and it was awful. And so when I returned, of course, when I came back, I somebody, a mutual friend of ours, had asked me on a date, and of course I was going to do that because I was upset, and because of all this womanizing, thinking it would make me feel better, but of course it didn't. But anyway, I finally did seek a protective order against my son's father, and after finally having the courage. But as far as my daughter's father, that date I went on, I guess back then I was partying, and one thing led to another, and I literally, had one date with this guy, because that same weekend I I went to church, and I had this profound spiritual encounter, and I just stopped dating. I didn't, I cut off all those old friends, and I quit smoking, I quit drinking, and all that, and just that's when I was able to break free from my son's father. But 3 months later, I find out, after cleaning up my life, after I made this huge decision, I was pregnant after that one date, and it was so scary. But I was at a point where I was ready to make the right choices and take responsibility for my actions and stop running in fear. So, all this fear, I had so much fear, crippling fear, not just from childhood, but then you have somebody you love that's physically harming you and doing things silly that are tormenting. And so I was trying so hard to just be right. And then I had my daughter, Hope. And so then I'll just I'm just giving some background information. My story. I mean, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. I'm a little bit nervous.
No, you're not talking to. I'm following you. So you have 2 children, a boy and a girl with 2 different fathers. Are you on speakerphone right now?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not on speakerphone. No, it's a
little
bad connection.
Yeah, it's a little muffled, so try and speak into the microphone of your phone. That'll help. But I can follow you. You have 2 children with 2 different fathers, and the first father was abusive, and so you got an order of protection against him, and then you got pregnant kind of unintentionally with the second father, and that's kind of where we are in your story right now. Right?
Correct. Yes. Correct. Okay. So, so it turned out that both of them, which I didn't know until like way later on, like in 2004, they both wound up getting arrested by the feds and for under conspiracy charges. Conspiracy to import and export a controlled substance, which was MDMA, which is the drug that's in ecstasy, or some people call it Molly or whatever. But my son had to witness that too, which was awful. They put guns to my son's father's head in front of he was 5 years old at the time. And there was a ton of, federal agents, FBI, DEA, Houston PD, and they did it right in front of my son. And I still feel so bad for him because he had to witness that. But my daughter's father, he was incarcerated for the same thing. Thank God they didn't witness that. But I knew we had a mutual friend, my son's father and I, but I didn't know they were actually connected to the same crime ring. So,
wow. So they ended up being in the same crime ring, both selling drugs, importing and exporting ecstasy. Wow, that's heavy.
Correct. It gets even heavier because later on the federal agent put them in the exact same cell block together in Denver, Colorado, because apparently they were doing stuff out of Denver, and I guess they had jurisdiction. I had no idea, none. And so they spent 2 years together, 2 out of 4 years. They were sentenced to 4 years, of course. They worked really hard to get that sentence down because they both have an extensive criminal, rap sheet. So they worked with the feds, obviously. But the feds, for some reason, I don't know if they didn't know, but they put them both together for 2 years. So they became very close, needless to say.
Wow.
Yeah. So brother and sister. And I know that's strange, but, you can't write this stuff. You can't make this stuff up. But anyway, so all that to say, 2 of them that are, in alliance, and they both spent 4 years total together. And right before they got out, I was in I was in a car accident, and I needed help caring for my kids because I had some neck and back injuries. And my son's father, he has a brother that's in Miami, and he has he is a doctor. At least this is what he told me. I know he was the most successful one out of their family anyway. I met him a couple times, and he's like, yeah, if you need help, love to have Christian, and I'm a doctor, and you don't have to worry about it, this, that, and the other. And he said, as soon as you say the word, I'll send him back. And I believed him, and he had me sign an affidavit in case, power of attorney, that's what it was, in case Christian needed to go to the doctor or there's an emergency or whatever. And naive me signed it. And so as soon as I asked for my son back, he told me, Google my name and see who I am and see if you ever see Christian again. And I did. And he apparently, he worked with Jeb Bush, at least I already knew that, Jeb Bush and Rick Scott, who were the governors of Florida. And he was a lobbyist. And so he gave my son to his father, who was released on parole to Florida instead of Houston, where I was from. And we had a court order. It was only a temporary order, though, and I didn't understand that. I didn't realize that just signing the temporary order, not the final order, that the temporary order expires after a while. So basically, the police couldn't get involved at all because he had just as many rights as I did. And, there was nothing to enforce. So all that to say, I didn't see my son for 5 years after that. But
did you go to court to try and reverse this?
Okay, yes, actually I did. And this is the problem with the family courts, which, even in the Constitution, there's this is not even a court. There's either a civil court or you have criminal court. And these family courts are so corrupt. And I was so naive. And until you're thrown into the lion's den like this, which I don't regret because it's taught me so much. Now that I look back, I was so naive. Like, this is actually the reality of what we live in. So let me tell you how I went to get my son. Okay, so he handed my son over to his father. Remember, he's released on parole to Miami, Florida. I'm in Texas, okay? Then my daughter's father gets released. So my daughter was only 4 years old when he was incarcerated. So she didn't remember him when he came out 4 years later at 8 years old. So it was very awkward and very scary for her. And, when he was paroled, he, started exercising his visitation. And I was getting reports of him using cocaine, him shooting up. My daughter would just scream in terror anytime she had to go on the weekends, and she would call me at his office. He would leave her unsupervised literally all day at his office with just strangers, people like men, and she was so scared all day, literally, and just drive around. I don't know what he was doing, but I guess supposedly work. So anyway, I continued to get these reports and of the psychological abuse too with my daughter, and this one concerned other party. She called me a couple of times because my daughter's father had, ruined her wedding too. On top of that, asking for drugs, asking stuff. It was making a complete fool of himself, and it got to a point where, my daughter would tell her things as well, this other party, and it was enough. Like, I had, you have 40, and in the States, you have like 48 hours if you suspect any kind of abuse or neglect from a child, about a child. And this girl knew that, and I knew that too. And if I didn't do anything, you're put in a situation where you do have to protect your child. So Child Protective Services, I had to call them. Otherwise, I could get charged with failing to prevent child from harm or something. So I called CPS, not knowing anything about CPS, but they told me that they were going to be there within 2 weeks. Well, they never showed up, and by that time, I took my daughter and I removed her from from Houston. We were living in Houston. I drove with her to Tarrant County, which is like Dallas, Texas. And I was waiting I was thinking that CPS was going to show up. Well, when they didn't, I felt like I was forced, to let him continue exercising his visitation. So he drove to Tarrant County to pick her up, and then he didn't bring her back. But
wow, okay.
For a couple of weeks, he wouldn't let her call me or anything, and I was so scared. Finally, CPS called me. And I let them know in his criminal history, I let them know I haven't seen her. Please help me. Please intervene. We're supposed to show up, because they were like, why are you letting her go with him if you know these things, about him? I'm like, I was waiting for you to show up. And, I was caught in a situation where, I had to make a decision. I felt like I was damned if I did and damned if I didn't.
Yeah.
And I really
you have to follow the court orders, right? People don't understand that. You have to follow the court orders. So if you have to bring them for visitation, if you don't bring them for visitation, you're in trouble. And if CPS doesn't show up on time, then you have to hand off your child to the father. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like it's just impossible. And see, at that time, I didn't understand law. I mean, how many people do unless you go to school for it? And it's a deception here, and they're counting on it. They're banking on it, literally banking on it, because they're making money off of our children, trafficking our children. They're generating revenue, basically. But get this, okay, so I got CPS, the caseworker. He called me back. He said, I got in touch with him. You can go ahead and go pick her up or whatever. And he said, he's giving you legal advice. This caseworker, he tells me, well, you know what? All I know is as long as you're protecting your daughter, any order is null and void. It means nothing. I go, thank you for telling me that. He goes, but wait. Before you go and do anything, let me get with my legal team and make sure that that's correct. And he put me on hold, gets back on the phone and said, yes, I was correct. As long as you're protecting your daughter, any court order is null and void. It was supposedly joint custody, but I found out just even recently I never signed a final order. There was absolutely, we used a dispute resolution. We didn't even go to court. We agreed privately. That's not enforceable. So I just wanted to interject that. Absolutely no jurisdiction. But this is the thing. I did get her. I took his legal advice, and as confirmation that, okay, and I'll deal with that. So I go pick up my daughter and drive to Florida, because now my son is because he's been there for several months, and because they wouldn't return him, now he's considered under Florida's jurisdiction. So I grabbed her, took her, and go drive to Florida to fight for my son. It's kind of hard, and really, I mean, you're going to run out of money eventually. You know how expensive family court is. I didn't have the money to fight that, so I had to drive there, especially from another state. I drove there. And the doors kind of opened for me to get a place there, and I had a friend there at the time. We were dating, but we're still good friends. But went there. I had a good support system. I was there for 3 months, and let me just interject this. My daughter's father hired the exact same attorney that my son's father hired for our son, highly unethical. And his attorney knew it. And, you can't date. She knows better. This woman they're so correct. I've never seen evil like I have seen, especially in family court, or just people with, there's no, it's like they have no feeling. Like they don't, I don't know. I guess it would be a sociopath when you don't have a conscience or something. But, she surely took the case, and she, which gives her an unfair advantage, and she's actually violating the attorney-client relationship technically, but unless I guess if the father consented, but still I don't, because she's getting secondhand information or whatever. I forgot the term for it, but all that to say, 3 months later, my daughter is at school. She doesn't return home from school one day, and I'm panicking, and it's pouring down rain, just like in the movies, and I did like a circle like 3 different times. She always came home in time, which we live right down the street from the school. Well, I did a knock at my door thinking it's my daughter, and I swung the door open. I was like, Hopi. And it's 2 U.S. Marshals. They pushed my door open. 1 female, 1 male. This one guy was like 6'6". The U.S. Marshals, they pushed my door open, and they're like, Hope is fine, she's fine. And this guy just grabbed my arms, pushed them behind my back. I'm like, I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, I just remember when they're at the door, I thought my daughter was dead. I remember screaming like, oh, my God. Why else the police at the door? Like, they're going to tell you, I'm sorry.
They didn't show you a warrant? Didn't show you a warrant or anything? Wow.
No, they did not. And yes, they did not. Actually, I'll just say this too, and I don't want to get off track as well because I can easily do that. But when I wrote later on, I had written to my congressman, my U.S. congressman, about that, especially. Oh, anyway, they said they never. They never arrested me, but that's a whole other issue. I mean, they expect us to take responsibility, but but they don't. So they showed up at my daughter's school apparently as well. They told me that they were there. That they said that or when they came to my door, and they're like, "Don't act like you don't know what this is for." I'm like, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, as far as the warrant goes, they couldn't even remember what the charges were for." The lady was like,
no, I mean, why did they even arrest you, He
said one is for a charge in Texas for interfering with child custody. Other one, I just can't remember the other one. I just can't remember. She kept saying that. And at the time, I wasn't thinking warrant. I mean, I just, you're in a position, who has, it's unfortunate that I had to learn, well, I want to say unfortunate I had to learn this way. I'm thankful for what I've learned, but I'm not used to this quote-unquote system. I'm not a career criminal. So to have to exercise your rights like that, and it's very intimidating because they have guns. And I have neck and back injury, and the guy was 6'6" as well, and I was so afraid he would crush me. But what were you going to ask me? You were going to ask me something.
Well, I was wondering, so you drove from Texas to Florida. You were there for 3 months, and those cops came to arrest you on supposedly violating a custody situation in Texas, but they did that in Florida?
Yes, and this is because of what my daughter's father did and his attorney. She's such a great liar. I guess all lawyers are, but she and he told authorities that I was a huge prostitution ringleader, and that I was mentally ill, and that I had kidnapped our daughter or abducted our daughter, and that he was the custodial parent, They said that he was a custodial parent and that I was a non-custodial parent. That is the only way they could get them to come over there. And if he's got an attorney backing him on that, and then she's so shrewd and deceptive that she actually, this is a normal thing for her, she will literally make documents. And you won't notice it till later, but she will literally put the fraud right there in front of your face. And because it took me a while to figure out, she put on the papers right there, even that I was that I was a non-custodial and that he was the custodial. And it's hidden in plain view, and this woman is perfectly fine with doing it. And he never even, we haven't even been to court yet since he had been out. He was still out on parole. And of course I didn't learn this till later when I was able to look in my file, and they don't care. They're just going to believe what they hear and then throw your butt in jail and you tell it to the judge. That's their attitude. But and I didn't know my rights. Had I known, then it wouldn't have gone down that way. But they took her, put her on a plane. They went to her school with no court order, with no warrant. Yeah. And of course, the school, when I asked for their ID, have nothing, no information on them. And so it's a nightmare. But they took her, put her on the plane, and my daughter tells me whenever I do talk to her, which is very rare, she says, they said I was going to just come right back to you. They said it was only going to be a week or two. They said it was only going to be a week or two. Now I have to wait this long? I mean, she was so upset about that because I guess that's what one of the officers told her. And, yeah, they put her on a plane back with him, and she had to live with her father. That, like I said, he was like a complete stranger to her, and he would just leave her by herself and things like that. And he's mentally abusive. It was living with 2 other men. So she was in a household at 9, barely turning 10, with 3 adult men. And it's mind-boggling. When U.S. Marshals, they took me in an SUV. They had 2 black SUVs. They handcuffed me. Thank God my ex, was my ex-boyfriend, but we're really good friends. He was there at the time, and thank God. I don't know what I would have done, but he was there, and he can attest to it as well. And they took me to a police station in Orange County, Florida, which is Orlando. And when I spoke to the detective, at first I was requesting an attorney, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to tell her, I don't have anything to hide. And I didn't know how long they're going to make me sit in that room for, so I went ahead and told the detective what had happened, and I could tell by her demeanor and her attitude towards me that she felt kind of bad because I explained that he was out on parole. And she goes, she said that she had given my daughter a teddy bear and, explained to her, you're going to have to start growing up really fast now and saying things like that. And anyway, she told me, you do know that she's going to be living with 3 adult men, right? And I said, no, I did not know that. I thought it was 2. No, it's 3. And she's she's at risk for being molested, right? I'm like, well, I believe that, yes, because of my childhood and kind of understand the cycle. But, and this officer was taking me away in handcuffs, and she's like, well, good luck to you. And I could tell she felt bad, and but there's nothing she can do at that point, of course. It's too late. She was already on the plane back into his arms. And so she had no idea her father was on parole. I'm sure she would have questioned it, but I went to jail there for 3 weeks. That was where this huge case was about Casey Anthony case. I was actually in the same cell block as her. The I don't know if you're familiar with that case, but anyway, it was pretty.
The Casey incident case. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I got sick when I was in general population, and never been jailed for in my life, by the way.
How long did you have to be there?
I was there for 3 weeks until they extradited me. Get this is what they said. They put they blind us all up, all this, inmates or those criminals. I'm just kidding. But they said, look, by law, we have to let you go in 30 days. But if you do not sign these extradition papers, we're going to keep you longer anyway. So I just wanted to get to my daughter. Yeah, because you in a situation where you're under duress, basically. And what am I going to do? I'm going to stay longer. I'm panicking about getting to my daughter. Panicking.
Right.
Yep. Like they took her. I want to know where she is. So I signed them, and it took them 3 weeks. And then, oh, gosh, they put me on, they got a U.S. Air Marshal to come get me. It was really embarrassing. They handcuffed me in the front, and then cover my handcuffs with like a jacket or something, so it wouldn't make the passengers panic or uncomfortable. Oh gosh, it was the weirdest thing. I felt like I was having an outer body experience. So the guy was really nice though, and he bought me I remember he bought me a Coke, and I was just so thirsty, and just when you're in there and you have been deprived of just normal, just regular things, I just drank that thing so fast. And then when I went to booking in Harris County, which is Houston, Texas, they booked me on, the lady said, she called my name, Jennifer Sisk, and I said, yes. She goes, you just had another charge added. And I was like, what? For what? What are you talking about? She said, for child support violation. I'm like, I'm receiving child support. How am I getting a child support violation? I don't know. Your head in this file something, ma'am. I was like, she said, and it's $5,000 cash, or you can't get out. I'm like,
wow.
$5,000 cash.
Well, not even that, but at first you get railroaded by a lawyer who's putting in fraudulent papers to get you arrested. And then you're being railroaded on child support you're supposed to pay all of a sudden while you're the one receiving the child support. So the entire case is rigged from beginning to end, it sounds. 100%.
It was, people only knew that psychologically you can't see these assaults, but it's so shocking to your system because you're like, when your freedoms are threatened and you are up against a monster that is so cunning and has no fear of any, even spiritual consequences, because I believe in sowing and reaping and karma, and sometimes it works really freaking fast, and sometimes it's very slow. But I couldn't do it for that very reason, because I know I will reap what I sow. It will come back at some point. So I don't know. It's shocking to your system. And I did find, I was there, look, under the Constitution states that you have to, as far as an arraignment, you need to be aware of what your charges are within 72 hours. Well, I had an arraignment so look, I had two, so I was in criminal court and then family court, which is really weird. Interfering with child custody, I had an arraignment for. And then for the other charge of this so-called child support, I was sitting there and I kept writing I was just looking at it today, the same note that I had written to one of the guards at the jail. Then when am I going to get out to have a court date? No court date, no out date, because everybody asks for their out date. No out date, $5,000 cash, she wrote on it. So finally I got my friend, I said, call the 309th court, ask them when I'm going to have a arraignment or a hearing or something. And my friend called and they said, can you tell me when Jennifer Sisk is going to have a hearing or a court date? And they said, well, when Jennifer Sisk gets arrested, she'll have a court date. He's like, yeah, he didn't even know because of her dirty work. He didn't even know. So he goes, Jennifer Sisk is sitting in your jail right now and has been sitting there for 2 weeks. And the clerk was like, oh, my God. She was panicking. And I had a court hearing that very day, and they did it right away. And then I saw this attorney, Stephanie Prophet is her name. Prophet. The irony. Talking about this. It's funny when you said that. Like, yeah.
Miss Prophet, yeah.
Miss Prophet, but you're just fine. It's so symbolic. So, she's in there going, oh, it's my birthday, and she's joking around, and I'm in there with my, I guess an bright orange scrubs and handcuffs, and she's like, missing exploited children do such a good job, don't they? God, missing exploited children do such a good job. Sitting there mocking me and, like, just rattling in her own, like, just in my face, like, messing with me. She did that, and she was a part of that thing. And I'll get to the missing and exploited children in a bit, but the judge at the time was actually pretty cool. He was on my side, but he appointed an amicus attorney or an amicus attorney. And this is the thing with the amicus attorney is there's so many different jobs and duties. It's like everybody calls them guardian ad litem. Guardian ad litems are very different. Their duties are very different. And because of our ignorance, at least in Texas and most people, because nobody reads what their duties are, and they make it so complex. There's like 3 different ones, an amicus, a guardian ad litem, or an attorney ad litem, and they all have different duties. And it's important for people to understand that. And what was on the order, what she was ordered to do was to assist the court. This can only be, this is a private suit. This was not a CPS case. If it was a CPS case, there would be a guardian ad litem. And I just had to say that. Pointed her. And it took a while. I didn't get to speak to my daughter for like a while. I think they wanted, this is what the judge did say, though, that kind of was disturbing, but I just, was just trying to be cool. He was just like, because of the anxiety or whatever, I would just wait to contact her until this is over, which was kind of weird. That part I didn't like, but he didn't know that I was even in jail. But, of course, that's because of what Prophet had filed. Because I did look in my file later and discovered that she did file it. And that Frank Wren, this judge, only in his order, it was a KPS, like a KPS warrant, and it said for anywhere she may be found in the state of Texas, there was a warrant. Anywhere she may be found in the state of Texas. That's why she knew that there's no way she's going to be able to bring me back. So they had to make it up and make it bigger than it was to make the arrest. And this is such an abuse of power. And she's never been held accountable. I mean, there's so many other things that we could talk for days about the stuff that she's done. And I mean, and I remember when discovering this, like, the only reason, why would somebody go and risk losing their license or just do it so blatantly? There must be money involved. There has to be, and I couldn't figure it out for a long time, but
Well, it sounds like the fathers of your children put out some big amounts of cash for your kids. It sounds like they came up with a plan to, give a lawyer a bunch of money to write up these fraudulent papers and then get you this amicus attorney or guardian ad litem person to screw you again over there.
Yeah, for sure. It was, for temporary orders, this is the thing. I find out later, even other attorneys know about this amicus attorney, Claudia Canales, and Stephanie Prophet. And, there's a safe supervised visitation program. Do y'all have that there in the Netherlands?
Yeah, we have supervision homes. Yeah.
You do? Okay.
We have, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Well, there's a place called the SAFE program in Houston, and I discovered from talking to her, because, I'll get to when I had to go there, or they told me I had to, but she was, my ex had called her, the executive director of the supervisor. She brought some things to her attention, or brought up Stephanie Prophet and Claudia Canales, and she literally said, I was just walking out of a meeting about those two attorneys. And even the director of this safe supervised visitation program has been to the FBI 4 times about these 2 attorneys that are in my case because of the fraud, and they're abusing what that facility is for. They're abusing it, and they target women only. And she said every single time, not sometimes, every single time those 2 work together, custody goes to the father. Every time. And and I've talked even to her before. I've talked to her before several occasions, because I ended up having to go there to see Hope. But she said that she was ordered by my same judge that did the final orders, which I'll get to that in a few, but this judge, Sherry Dean, ordered her not to report anything that a child tells her about neglect or abuse or any sexual abuse. They gave her an order not to report it to CPS.
That's totally unlawful. I mean, yeah, the whole thing is completely unlawful. The entire story is unbelievable. Wow. So did you have an attorney at this point to fight for you?
At first, I did. For this up through the temporary orders, but I couldn't afford him anymore, and he wasn't asking them certain things. Like, she's not getting certain things on the record where I'm like, why aren't you asking her about this, or why aren't you asking that? I wound up, he wanted to withdraw, which they're not really supposed to. At least I know in criminal court, but I wanted him to. I wanted to for temporary orders. He handled it, but of course it was. Let me back up a second. They switched judges on me is what it was, because those 2 attorneys that work together, they switched judges on me. And because they realized that Franklin, the original judge, wasn't going to make me go to this SAFE program. He told them no. So when they found out, they kept resetting the court date, and then they said, okay, well, you can't reset the court date anymore, and you have to go to the hearing today. I'm like, I've never even reset the court date, but they were allowed to, but I wasn't. So I was forced to be with the associate judge, Mecca Walker, which when we look at temporary orders, like, he was still on parole, and they actually had absolutely nothing. There was no neglect, no abuse, nothing. And nothing. I mean, they were talking about political rallies I would go to, which is not illegal. Okay, I have a First Amendment right to redress of grievances and to petition, or to to assemble, peacefully assemble. So what? I go to political rallies, and they were talking about feeding Hope ramen noodles, rice, chicken, and corn and things like that. I'm like, we're Asians, so what? I mean, like, I'm like, this is the kind of stuff. That's what the amicus was asking, like stuff like that. They really had nothing, but they do have a way of making you feel like you've done something wrong, or they try to shame you, or whatever. Like, I can't feed her that. Are you kidding? But I made sure I got on the record that we're Asian, because that is to me, it sounded discriminatory. Oh, they said, and ramen noodles. I'm like, yeah, we're Asian. We eat ramen noodles. You know?
I mean, the entire situation is ridiculous. Your daughter is living with 3 men, and her father is a convicted felon, and they attack you on the fact that you're eating ramen noodles, and that's somehow supposed to hold up against that situation? That's outrageous.
There was no psychological evaluation. There wasn't even orders for psychological evaluation. There was no neglect. Those safe programs like this. Okay, I forgot about this. I had reported Stephanie Prophet to the Texas State Bar for her discriminatory comments. She was saying stuff like, "Oh, is that your family? Is that your dad? You look like you belong to that family." Like saying stuff like that in the courtroom. And so I reported her for her comments, and so she brings it up in the temporary orders hearings. And guess what? The judge they forced me to be with was black. So she goes, is it true that you filed a grievance against me for being a racist? I didn't use the word racist because that's not something I would say. It's a discriminatory comment. Right. And, you know, and since this black woman, you know, that's her colleague, is like, we objected, my attorney objected for relevance, because it has nothing to do with if I'm a fit parent or not. What are you focusing on, you woman? Seriously.
Well, and not even that. Why aren't they focusing on the fact that your child is with a convicted felon who has 2 other men living with him? I mean, the fact that the guy is a convicted felon, that should have, your daughter should have never been placed with the father, period. And your son should have never been placed with his convicted felon father either. And they should have never been allowed to be in the same cell block, to collude, to take your children from you. That should have been what the court case was about, not about ramen noodles and discriminatory comments. You know what I mean? So what they've done is they've distracted the essence of the case to something different in order not to deal with the real issue at hand. It sounds like.
Yes, absolutely. Like, because, you know, these appointees, like the amicus, like, first of all, why would you need that? Why are you making them they would make them the judge. That's basically what they're doing. They're making the decision. Ultimately, but you're not competent enough, judge, to figure out BS. You have to have somebody come in there, do their little household, home study. Seriously, honestly, you really need somebody else to help you figure this. It's not that complex. Really, it's not. So they make them become a judge. And there's incentives behind it. They get grants from the federal government, and it's so sickening. I wish more people were informed, but unfortunately, people just like me, because I was there too. I thought you go to court, you tell them the truth. Of course, the judge can read through BS. They're gonna hear my story, and they're gonna be like, "Yeah, you're innocent," you know. They're gonna know. But I'm so naive. This Michael Walker orders me to go to the state supervisor education program, ordered me to have monitored calls. No, it wasn't her. It was the other judge. Monitored phone calls with my daughter a convicted felon monitoring my phone calls? He's on parole right now? Why? How is he competent?
Right.
It's so absurd. Not just that, but
outrageous. Yeah.
for my child. How weird is that for her? That's abusive.
Mhm.
She can't say what she wants to. You know.
How long has this situation been going on now? How long have you not had? Well, when was it that you lost custody of both your children?
Okay. The final orders was in 2011 with Judge Jean. She was a newly elected judge that the amicus attorney endorsed and supported her campaign. I found it out right after the final, and I filed a motion to disqualify or recuse this judge because of financial interest involved. And and I called them all out on it, and I called them out on the fact that she was appointed to be an amicus attorney, but why is it entered as an attorney ad litem? She can't be both. She's either one or the other. Which hat is it? That's a conflict of interest right there.
Yeah, that's a conflict of interest. Yeah.
And then they didn't tell me when the next hearing was, but thankfully I found out. Flew from Florida all the way back to Texas again, so I was going back and forth. And this judge said that, I understand, ma'am, that it's your right to refuse, but what is it in my order or in the language or something that you don't like, I'd like to get it on record? And I said, you mean about the recusal? Because I wanted to make sure that was on record. She said, no, I'm not talking about the recusal. She got so mad. I'm talking about this. I guess it was their proposal, the other side. And see, people don't understand, when you go to court, you negotiate. You don't have to accept anyone's offer. It's an offer when you go to court. Just because it's just, judges have to have evidence. You make a ruling based on facts and evidence. That's
right.
Legal facts and evidence. Not just
the fact that they dragged it on this long is ridiculous enough as it is. They should have seen immediately that the facts are clear. The fathers of your children are convicted felons, and so they're not safe there. And it's as simple as that. So they should have never ended up with the fathers in the first place. So they've dragged you through family court like this afterwards is ridiculous. It's just outrageous. Do you have like some kind of legal fund to get to raise money for a good attorney or something? Because
I don't trust attorneys, and with the attorneys thing, I'm better off doing it myself. And anything that I have filed, they just ignore it. They ignore it. They're not doing their due process. I've challenged the court's jurisdiction. They just ignore it. They don't care. And now of course they're retaliating against me because I called them out on their stuff, and she was a newly elected judge, and I have written to I think it was an inspector general, and they spoke to Claudia Canales because of the birth certificate and everything. They changed my daughter's last name and her social security number, if you can imagine that. And
wow.
Yeah, her last name is Foster. Foster.
Her last name is now Foster. Okay, yeah, it's Foster Child.
No, it's
outrageous.
Foster Child. And there's certain things that you have to do in order before you even change the child's last name. And they change her identity, and that is so infuriating to me because you change her. That's who she was. Sisk. She had my last name. That's who she identified with. They forced her to take this name with the father that she was petrified of. And, my daughter worshipped, or I don't know how she feels about me now because I know she loves me. I just don't get to speak to her because she won't let me talk to her.
So you have, do you talk to her on the phone or?
No, he won't let me. He won't. He says, "Oh, I told you to call," but she just doesn't want to talk to me, which I know is a lie. He won't let her speak to me, and if he was a responsible parent, he would say, "Let's call your mom," or something. Never returns my phone calls ever. And he is like the gatekeeper. He monitors everything that she does, everything. And so she's scared of him too. So I know that she won't. He tells her that, but the courts don't want your mom to do that because she's mentally ill and
yeah, they make up stuff. They'll say to the child, like, your mom is crazy or dangerous, and that's why you shouldn't have any contact with your mom. That's what they usually say to the children. Yeah. How about your son? Do you have contact with your son?
Yes, I do. Because the thing there in Florida is my attorney never even showed up for the trial.
Wow.
He changed didn't show up. In fact, very last minute, he hired some other attorney in Miami and didn't even tell her it was for a trial. And I don't even know what he told her. I can't even remember, but he just certainly didn't tell her it was for a final hearing or something. And I'm like, I didn't retain you. You're not my counsel. I didn't retain you. I don't care if he hired you. And I asked for continuance because of that. The judge said no. So basically, I got railroaded, as she said. And had some great stuff, like as far as evidence with my son, going to raves at 9 years old. You know what a rave is, right? I don't know if you know what that is, if you have raves out there, but these are like huge parties.
These dance parties. These dance parties. Yeah. So he's forced to go to dance parties at 9 years old.
Yes.
Bizarre.
And yes, it really is. My son has
but
been
you have some contact. You've had some contact during these 5 years, at least with him. That's at least something.
Yes, that is what I was happy for. I'm like, okay, this is better than what I had before, because I didn't see him for so long. But so we do, we've gotten much closer. As far as visitation and stuff like that, because now I guess his father feels confident, and because before we didn't have an order in place, And he was afraid.
And does your son have contact with your daughter?
Actually, he does. Sometimes I wish they would contact each other more, but they do. But she went and visited him, I think it was 2014, last year. It's been the last couple of years that she has visited him in Miami. And yes, they look so much alike now. It's a trip. But one thing I will say is that my son told me that when she went to visit, that his dad was like, I don't agree with what your father's doing. I guess he was drunk one night. He was like, I don't agree with what your father's doing. It's wrong. And when you're 18, you run to your mom. No, wait. When you're 17, you run to your mom. He so bad for Hope. And that's one thing I will say that he told her, and I'm so grateful for that. So let her know that it was,
Yeah, they're supportive to each other, and then maybe once they're, growing out of this situation, they can support each other, and hopefully you all will be reunited at some point. But I hope that it will happen before they age out. Let's take a little break. Let's take a little music break, and then when we come back, we'll continue to talk about your case. I also see someone holding. Someone is calling in, and we'll see who that is and what they have to contribute. And
awesome! That'll be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll see you on the other side. And welcome back to Hell is for Children. We're in the second hour, and in the first hour I've been talking to Jennifer Sisk, who's a protective mother of a daughter and a son who were both placed with in full custody of their fathers, who are convicted felons, and were actually incarcerated together and worked together to collude against Jennifer to steal her children from her through an attorney who made up all kinds of fraudulent charges against her that have never been proven in court, and no court has been willing to actually look at the evidence and the facts. And due to these fraudulent orders, Jennifer was actually incarcerated as well, which is awful. And so her children have been in the full custody of their convicted felon fathers for 5 years now, and she barely has any contact with her daughter, at least a little bit of contact with her father. So that's just to kind of get us to where we are right now in the show. And I have a caller in who's on hold, so I'm going to put the caller on. It's area code 609. Hello there. Are you there? Area
yes,
code
I'm 609. Here.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Who's this?
My name is Amber Turner. Bear with me if I cry because I'm going through, I can relate to your situation in certain ways. I have 4 kids. My daughter had me, a daughter's father. I have 4 kids. One, her father went to jail when she was very young. And then I had another one, and he was extremely abusive, my second daughter's father. And then I thought I found the right person, my best friend from high school, and I got married, and I had twins with him. And he ended up molesting my kids, and I didn't know until he molested my 3rd daughter that it was him. And I have records of everything. He had me incarcerated 23 times for sending him text messages, my second daughter's father, saying that I was going to kill him and kill her. And the state took my kids for 2 years. It took me almost 3 years to get them back. They went to as far as trying to terminate my rights. And then they gave my kids back to me when they realized that they weren't adoptable because they were too emotionally damaged. They're 15 and 13 now. And my 2 8-year-old twins, Buddy and Gabby, I actually have stuff all over the internet, prayers for Buddy and Gabby. I go to court this Tuesday. When she came forward in 2013 about her abuse, because I had been accused of so many things, I recorded her disclosure. I was accused of coaching her. I was accused of telling her things, and now the division is going as far as sending me to their doctors and trying to say that I have Munchausen syndrome. Although I have police reports, documentation, my son was sexually assaulted, my daughter was sexually assaulted, my oldest one is diagnosed bipolar and PTSD and has a million issues. She's been in and out of group homes, and they're saying it's all because of me. But I have all the records to show. So the best advice I could give you is whatever county your daughter lives in, that's the county you need to file. And if that court ignores you, there is an appellate division on an emergent basis that you can file. I have been fighting this myself. I have learned so much to the point where I have a lawyer now that's pretty much standing by me. I owe him money, and he when I first came to him, he wasn't going to take my case. He thought I was crazy because when I told him the things that had happened and the documentation that had been changed and the doctors that they had sent me to, and I've tried to sue the state, and the way they've docked their documentation, it looks like I'm just a crazy woman.
They do that. That is their tactic. That is classic.
Right.
That is
so
Go ahead.
I tried to do that, and I had several lawyers tell me, well, your kids were definitely molested. This definitely happened, and that definitely happened, but wrote me a letter and said, we're sorry we can't take your case because you're just as responsible for what happened as everybody else was because you didn't stop it. I said, I tried.
They don't want to go against whatever the ruling is. It's because they're afraid to. They don't want to stir the pot, and it's all because they're cowards. They don't want to go.
Well, I think some of it goes deeper than that. In my case, the state is responsible for some things, and the judges have made some decisions that caused my children to be beyond harmed, and the state is coaching my kids to say things about me. And they suspended my visitation 3 months ago when my daughter ended up in a psychiatric hospital because she has a seizure disorder from the abuse she withstood from her father while I was in jail for sex messages I never sent. And
unbelievable.
When she came back to me, the program that I had her in, a mental health program, they tried to call DIFUS on me because I didn't allow them to medicate. They were trying to say she had all these disorders, and I said, listen, I think she's having seizures from the head injury. She was in and out of psych hospitals. When she finally got to a neurologist and they did an EEG, they found out she was having seizures, so they put her on seizure meds. Well, when they took my kids from me in September of last year because I was calling the congressman, I was going to Washington, I was reaching out to the Center for whatever, who does absolutely nothing because they have no power. I don't know what the point of them overseeing New Jersey is because they can't do anything. And I got online when they were talking to the governor about it, and I said, you know, you're lobbying for us to no longer have somebody to oversee the division because you're doing so wonderful. I said, I'd like to know, what you think is so great. And they said, well, you know, this is what we think is going on. And I said, well, they had me on live air. And I said, well, that's funny because I have a son who is describing what it tastes like to suck a little boy's pee-pee. And a daughter who's doing all these other things, and I'm the one going through hell while the kids are living in the home where all this occurred when you took them away and gave them back 2 weeks later and closed out the FN docket. I said, so you're doing such a great job.
That you're unfit. I mean, what
evidence? They have absolutely none. They have none. What happens is they go into court and they throw so much crap up there. And since my case has been open since 2008, which is illegal, by the way, they throw all this crap that's just their opinion, and they send you to these specialists where they send them the documentation, and you're not allowed to give them any documentation. I've had gag orders put on me. I've had arrest warrants put out for me. I've been arrested. And I still keep telling them I'm not going to stop. I have a document from your doctor that says my daughter was molested. I have a document from your doctor that says my son was molested. So now they're saying, oh, no, she's making up all this stuff. She has Munchausen syndrome. I said, you need to.
You're making it. The Munchausen thing is there's somebody that has a organization that takes those cases about the Munchausen thing because that's been being used, and I guess apparently they're starting to use that. So
I'm not the first one?
No. This is used in many cases, actually. They accuse you of Munchausen by proxy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just got my lawyer and I work very closely together. I have a whole room that I own in his office.
That's something that they think that how can you prove
they tried bipolar.
Making it up?
They tried to say I was bipolar. They tried to say I was delusional. They tried to say I was coaching the kids. And it was every time they throw this stuff up, and if it doesn't work, then they come up with something new.
Even if you were bipolar. Let's say you have Munchausen. Okay.
Right. That doesn't mean you're going to kill your kids.
No. So you have a disability, so you're going to be discriminated against because you have a disability. I'm just saying hypothetically, they still can't do that under their own law, under their own federal law, under the ADA. Right. You cannot discriminate against somebody. You can't take away someone's kid because they have a disability. You can't. They have to make some sort of reunification. That's what they're funding it for.
I think their problem with me is that I've read their when they sent the discovery over to my attorney, they sent 14 boxes, and they said 21 volumes of files. They never expected anybody to go through them and read them. First of all, they were completely disorganized. Months, years, days. I spent 2 months at my lawyer's office, 9 to 5, and then went to another job. And by the way, I have fibromyalgia, so this kills me physically. I spend 9 to 5 at my lawyer's office, and then I go serve from 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 11, 12 o'clock at night, and come home and do it again.
That's fighting zealously. If only attorneys would fight that zealously for.
And that's why they're angry, because I read through the documentation. I found the reports that said the father, not only the doctor thought that he had molested his daughter, although he denied it, that his story was shaky, and that he scored on their little test as moderately at risk to molest another child. But he has full custody of my kids, and I have no contact.
Have you posted
Well,
it?
I
Did you
think,
say you had a website?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I was asking if you posted it or you had a website, did you say?
Well, I at one point was posting the stuff on Facebook when nobody would listen, and I had me and two of my friends fight vigorously together. And we had national recognition at one point about 2 years ago, and Judge Ankowitz put a gag order on me, shut down my Facebook right after it was ruled federally that you couldn't do that. And said that if I was found showing any of DYFUS's documentation to any of their own doctors when they sent me for psych evals, or if I was found to, he cut me off from any other court, said that he was not only the only court that could hear my case, but he was the only judge that could hear my case.
Bullshit.
I didn't know they could do that.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cuss.
That's all right, but that's what he did to me. And he took my kids away from the grandmother when I had full custody of the siblings, put them in foster care for being molested, gave them back to her, and I had the grandmother arrested. I went to the Burlington City Police Station in New Jersey, and I showed them all the documentation, had her arrested for what happened to my son, even though DYFUS didn't substantiate her for anything. The police arrested her. Well, the Attorney General, which is their attorney here, contacted the local police department and had, I guess, their Burlington County Prosecutor's Office, who are in collaboration together, and called the guy and said, this lady's nuts. She's making all this up. You can't prosecute this lady. The judge had given me full custody of the kids, said that the grandmother and the father could have absolutely no contact with them. 6 hours after I got that order, God help me, I should have gotten in a car when he gave me that, and I should have drove far away, and I didn't. And I hate myself for that. They came at 11:30 at night. The supervisor, people that don't even work after hours, the supervisor and the office manager came at 11:30 at night and ripped my babies from me. And my daughter was screaming at me, "Save me, Mommy, stop me. I don't want Daddy to hurt me anymore." And the officer said, "There's something wrong here because you're leaving her older two, but you're taking her younger kids." And the officer walked out and refused to help. And the other officer said, "I'm sorry, but they have paperwork." And come to find out that paperwork, even though it says it serves as a warrant, when it comes down technically it doesn't. But I didn't know that.
Well, then what about color of law, like the violations? Wouldn't that be exceeding,
Right. I've been going through this for a long time. I have the stuff on the page. I have 87 pictures of injuries of the children during time I had visitation while his mother had custody of my younger two while the state was allowing the older two to be abused. It's been hell. And I got him back, had him back for 3 years, and then got joint custody with the father. And then when he molested his daughter, the state stepped in, and now all my kids are gone. It's horrible.
Wow. I would love to have you on Hell is for Children and tell your entire story from beginning to end at some point. Would you like that?
I would love to do that. I'm looking for any help that I can. My boyfriend had started one of those, the pages where people go find me. He had started a GoFundMe page, but he didn't know what to write, and the situation is so complicated. It's hard to, because it started, and one of the issues that I have that may be different for you is I grew up in the system. So they target me, and they use the fact that I was adopted at 10 years old. They pull up juvenile records that were sealed because my adoption was a private adoption, and they say that I'm incapable of being a parent because I grew up in their system. I said, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about this for a minute. I said, if you're saying I'm incapable of parenting them because you raised me, what sense does it make for you to take them from me and raise them in the same system that you're claiming made me incapable of?
Or all of it, or any of the children.
And I was abused and molested and neglected and all that stuff in the system, and they claimed that my emotional instability from what happened to me in my childhood made me an unfit parent.
What? They have to prove that you are.
Outrageous. Well, let's do
I have no independent diagnoses. I've done everything that they've asked. I've went to an independent doctor every time they say something about me. And I have reports that say there's nothing wrong with her besides PTSD and anxiety over you guys. And after reading her childhood, it's a shame that this has clouded her more than her childhood.
Start bringing up your constitutional rights and saying, no, on the Fourth Amendment, it says you are protected from unreasonable search and seizure. Get a warrant.
And that's what I have said to my lawyer. See, the problem is that they're all friends. They're all buddies. They don't, going to court is like just a show. They've made a decision about what's going to happen in that courtroom before you've ever stepped foot in there. I don't care how much you pay the lawyer.
Absolutely.
That sitting in the courtroom is like a concert. They know what's going to happen before they step foot in there. It's just a show.
It's to keep you in there. It's to keep you in the vicious cycle. It's done intentionally.
I had requested, because you're entitled to discs or transcripts of hearings. Now, what I didn't know was that when it's an FN docket and it's a DIFUS docket, that you have to get the judge's signature to get it. So, of course, when that judge put a gag order on me and did all this other stuff and admitted in open court that the grandmother was responsible for my son getting molested, but flat out said in open court that he was basically going to do something to bury that finding so that I wouldn't get custody. I have been trying for 3 years to get a copy of that docket, and I can't get anybody to give it to me. They won't give it to me. They won't give it to a lawyer. I've tried everything. I mean, to the point where I'm at this point, I actually record the hearings on my phone when I go in, and I could go to jail for that. But at this point, it's worth it if I can prove what's happening to my kids. That's where I stand.
Yeah. I've
been in jail for things I didn't do, so why not go to jail for something I did that could ultimately protect my children?
You definitely need to go on the show and tell your story with Gurka.
Yeah, my friend had tagged me in your post yesterday. She tagged me in it and called me and said, you need to call these people and see if you can, find, because I've been going through this for a while, and she's known me since I was 16. She was like, this is horrible, you need to see. But my advice to you is wherever your kids are living, anything you file in your jurisdiction, means jack shit. It means nothing. They're not going to heed to it. They're going to ignore it.
No, I did file it,
but if you file it there and they ignore it and they don't respond to it, first of all, you have a right to. Do you know what an emergent order is?
No, I'm going to write that right now. And is that at any time? Let me write it down.
You have the right in every single state in the United States to file what's called an emergent order. They may name it different things. It's an emergency hearing. They call it different things in different states, but everyone knows what it is. And in that emergent hearing, you have the right. From the moment you step foot in that courtroom, they have a legal obligation to hear you before the end of the business day.
Wow. It doesn't matter even if
it doesn't matter. If you make an attempt to notify him that you're there, the father, and that you're filing an emergent motion against him, and if your kids are old enough to testify, you have a right to ask the judge to hear what they have to say.
Well, now they have a warrant out from my... Oh, wow. Okay.
You go there, you file it, you tell him what's happened, but you need to stick to only the important facts and anything that you can prove.
Sure, absolutely.
And once you can prove that, then you get in that courtroom and you tell them what's going on. At anything, no matter what, you have a constitutional right to visitation, joint custody of your kids, unless you are proven under the Constitution to be an unfit mother. And it takes a lot to do that.
Absolutely. And
So if you go there and you file that emergent motion, they have to hear you. And here's the extra piece. If they deny your emergent motion and you think that you have adequately proven that child should have been removed and that judge didn't act correctly, you have the right then and there to go to their Supreme Court and find out which area to ask for a Supreme Court to appeal it. But you have to ask for an emergent appeal. In an emergent appeal, they have 7 days to reply.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I have spent. I've educated myself so much. My lawyer wants me to work with him.
Oh man, you should. I should use it, but I can just file.
I'll give you my phone number. I will help you in any way that I can.
Thank you. That was great. That's great.
Yeah, that's
Thank
excellent.
you.
Amber,
Awesome.
are we friends on Facebook already, Amber, or not?
I think I just let's see.
Yeah.
Send me a
I
friendship request.
Asked to join the group. I just asked to join the group, and I think I was going to come to your rally in Washington, but I couldn't get out of work.
You should send me. No, you should send me a friendship request on Facebook, just under my name, Geerte Franken, and then I'll hook you up.
I'm going to put you on speaker so I can do it while I'm.
Add me too, sweetie.
Hold on.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the at your group, but your individual, your name is what?
It's Geerte Franken, Geerte, and then last name is Frenken. I'm the host of the show, so go ahead and send me a friendship request.
Just added you now.
Perfect, and then I'll hook you up with Jennifer, and you can look for Jennifer Sisk also on Facebook. And I want to thank you for giving that awesome tip to Jennifer and to the rest of protective mothers who are listening. And let's talk on Facebook on having you come on Hells for Children and tell your whole story from beginning to end, because you also sound like, as a pro se litigant, you sound like you're very experienced, and you might actually have a lot of helpful information for other protective moms.
What I normally do and what I've learned is that the lawyers charge you a ridiculous amount of money to do things that some of which you can do for yourself. What I have learned is that when you try to speak for yourself in a courtroom, the judge is actually offended if you don't have a law degree. They think that you think you're better than them. So what I do is I file all the motions for them. I do all the discovery. I put everything together. I type everything, and then all they have to do is submit it with their name on it. And all they have to do when I put their fight together in court, all they have to do is say what I tell them to say. And I will stop them and say, can we have a recess? Because, no, we have to fix this. Or I'll say, wait a minute, I need to speak.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Hell is for Children. And I'm talking to Jennifer Sisk, and we had Amber calling in with some awesome tips there. So I hope that was helpful. Jennifer, what do you think?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love her fiery spirit and her passion, and that's just awesome. I'm going to listen to that. I've never heard of that in my entire life. Emergent hearing. They probably don't want you to know that stuff.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. I think it's helpful for a lot of moms. The emergent motion it sounds like an emergency motion, and if they deny it, then it has to go to the Supreme Court, which would be wonderful, because then you get it out of that lower court. And that's in the lower court is where all these violations take place. And now what I have talked to other experts, and they say, well, the Supreme Court often upholds the lower court's decisions because they kind of all try to cover for each other. But I've also seen Supreme Court cases reverse orders. So there's more hope there, I would think.
Absolutely, especially if they violate the Constitution, like due process. At least they're supposed to uphold the Constitution. That, to my knowledge, is going to enforce that. You have due process rights. And
you can also file due process violations motions. That's another option. So. But there's many legal options to take. I am not a legal expert, though. I'm not a lawyer, so my job is kind of in this whole thing is to kind of hook everyone up with each other so you can help each other.
Sure.
And I'll make sure that you and Amber are joined in one of the Facebook groups that are closed, where these types of things are discussed and where people help each other. It's just impossible for me to do because I'm in the Netherlands, and the court doesn't even want to send me the court orders. That's where I'm stuck. And I understand that. So in your situation, similar things are happening. But beyond the legal situation, I want to kind of talk about how this has changed you, this whole situation. You know, I mean, for me, to going through all of this, it's really made me think about, you know, what's life all about and why are these things happening to me and what's the purpose of this in my life. And, you know, I've come to the point of, you know, finding myself as a host of this radio show and bringing awareness to these issues and helping other moms and fighting for my daughter in other ways than just the court. But I also find that it really brings kind of like brings the idea of like being a warrior for the right things, fighting injustice, fighting for human rights. And I know that you also had this also caused kind of a spiritual awakening for you as well. Would you, am I saying that am I putting that in the right way?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would definitely, it's a spiritual awakening, like on a different level, like almost like like you, like as far as your purpose, it helped me to discover, like, okay, this has to happen. Like this, I've been searching for so long. Like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? I don't want to leave this earth without fulfilling whatever it is that I was designed for this earth to do. And so I look back and go, because I would go, why are you letting me go through this? Why, you know, I cry out to God, why are you allowing this? What am I supposed to learn? Why? And then I look back and go, now I know why. Okay, had I not gone through that, I would have been oblivious to the injustice that's going on around me. I wouldn't feel like I had any purpose, to be honest with you. And I've learned, it's forced me to fight, and it forced me to learn. And when you are put in a situation, especially when they're dangling your child over your head, you know, you try to find a solution. Like, I have this problem. What is the solution to this problem? And it forced me to, and I've discovered things about myself I never even knew I had. And I have a passion for it, this strategy, you know, thinking them, you know, and it is, you know, knowledge is power. And I have been so empowered. My confidence has gone up tremendously. You know, of course, I can't do this alone. We do need supporters. I know that, you know, in the beginning of all this, that I felt so alone because people think they don't just give a child to an abusive father. Certainly, you've done something wrong. And that's what they're thinking. Their mindset, no matter what, because we're not used to this. Like, this is not normal. This is very abnormal, and it is a new thing because I believe this is a new thing. As far as we've never heard of so many women losing custody of their children. It was always the mother, especially at a young age, because and fathers weren't, you know, they were getting upset, but. You know, if there's like innocence and things like that, of course you're going to, that's just normal. Even animals, the mother is so important. And so, you know, just things like that taught me a lot of stuff about myself. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's definitely, you mentioned that stigma. I think that's really important for the listeners to think about because, you know, there's a lot of moms who don't want to speak up about their case because they're worried that they're going to be retaliated against. But, you know, this is the thing. There's this stigma about losing custody, but research has shown that 82% of abusive fathers actually get full custody of their children. And this is like a secret, the hidden, nasty, dirty little secret of the United States, and you know, and once women become aware of this, and I'm not just talking about protective mothers, we need all women to come on board and help us because this is, you know, an epidemic, and it's actually a pandemic because the fathers' rights movement that has created this situation since the 80s have actually their methods have spilled over into other countries, and now it's a global problem. And it's affecting generations to come. And what's so important is that once you get over the stigma and get beyond the shame, there's no shame because you were railroaded, right? You were railroaded. There's this fraud upon the court. So there's nothing to be ashamed about. If anything, the people that are inflicting this fraud on us should be ashamed of themselves. Let's turn this around and let's expose these people, you know. And I appreciate that you also mentioned the names of the people that were involved in your case and that are involved in your case, because we need to publicly shame them for what they are doing and turn this thing around on them. You know, so I commend you for being brave and sharing your story, and the same with Amber, who was on before. We need the moms to come forward and share their stories and name the names of the people involved, so other moms are warned, right?
Take your power back. You have to. And I figured that out. I was like, wait a second. Because there was somebody that worked at the supervised visitation program was like, oh, you don't want to upset, you don't want to piss off the amicus attorney. I'm like, and I remember thinking to myself, wait a second, she doesn't want to make me upset. Like, and I thought about that for a second. Like, I'm not gonna cower in fear. I've been crippled by fear, and I'm an overcomer. And you know what? I have nothing to lose. They've taken everything from me. I've got nothing to lose. So, you know what? I'm going to come with a vengeance, and I believe they're retaliating because I am exposing them. Even in the motion to recuse, I'm this newly elected judge. I'm calling them out on it. They never did the due process. They ignored it because they don't want to. You know, I'm sure it's shaming them. And then on my blog, I showed you earlier, which I haven't been writing in too much. I'm trying to, be cautious with what I do share. I don't want to show my whole hand to the adversary so they know any kind of do damage control or know what my next move is. So I've been kind of strategic with that. But as soon as I posted the document where Stephanie Prophet is just signs her name and acting as my attorney. It is Stephanie Prophet with her signature, attorney for Jennifer Sisk. As soon as I did that, I had just created this blog, and she trolled me, and she commented. I don't know if you saw that part, but her defamatory statement, and so she was using her license and her, position to make it appear as though what she is saying is true, and discredit me because, I didn't. Well, so that go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about when I saw that, and you showed me your blog right before the show, so I wasn't able to add the blog link underneath in the description of the show, but I will once the show is over. But one of the things that we need to do massively is go on Yelp. That's spelled Y-E-L-P. It's like a review page where you can put in the reviews of any professional or any business. And we need to massively go on Yelp and write reviews about the attorneys that have railroaded us, because that way we can alert the other moms who are new and coming into this situation. They can go Google that attorney, and then they can see what your experience with that attorney has been. I've tried to do that with, there's another website called Avvo, A-V-V-O, but they won't accept any negative reviews, which is ridiculous.
I know. I tried that, and that's why. So Yelp will allow you to, because the other ones, they won't post mine, because I think somehow they may be contracted with them or something to protect one another. It's like, no, you can make a review, but not the truth.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's probably owned by the Bar Association, and speaking about the Bar Association, I really think the Bar Association needs to be abolished altogether, because that's where all the racketeering goes down, and really this is a Ponzi scheme that we're all caught up in. There are some others that are looking at other ways around the system to yank out the full control of the family court in other ways. I want to do a show on that as well. So you know, Because at this point, really, the way I look at it is the government has no place in the lives of our children and our lives. They have no role in our family. They're looking at our children as their property, and they are not. So we need to work on that. And I know there's some people working on this. They have some methods to change that that status of your child.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And they technically are the fictional entity. But yes, you're right about that. And but, they use deception, but even the devil uses deception in order to get you to sign a contract with them. It doesn't matter, even our ignorance. That is our responsibility. People would just take the time and research this stuff, because knowledge is power, and they will stay on our ignorance, and they don't fight there. That's not what they do. They're there to make money, and they will...
We need a step-by-step. We need a manual on how to go about getting our children to change the status of our children being properties of the government. We need a manual on how to get them out of that status. I'm not sure how to do it, so I can't speak on it, but I would love to have a guest on who can explain how to do it. But that's definitely very interesting, because the way the system is set up is just to simply profits from victims, profits from abuse. And this is why our children are appointed to abusive fathers. And if a father, like the fathers that you're dealing with, they're convicted felons, that's the guarantee for them to get full custody, where it should be the complete opposite situation, obviously. Any normal human being looking at your case would just know that convicted felons, they would have to be completely rehabilitated and show that they are empathic, normal human beings again before they would ever get custody of their children. And that should be built up by having them first in supervised visitation, and then you take it from there. But in your case is outrageous. You haven't even been able to just put that in front of the judge. You've been railroaded from day one by attorneys that are paid off. That's the only conclusion that I can draw from your case, is that those people that got involved with those two fathers, they got a bunch of money and they figured out a way to railroad you. And when you were telling your story, you were saying, like, I was naive, but you know what? That's not naive, because no one in their right mind would think that this would be the outcome of that particular situation that you found yourself in. So I would say most people don't know what they're up against in family court until they actually get into it. You know what I mean? I had the same thing. I felt like I landed in some kind of parallel universe or something once I ended up in family court.
Yes.
Because everything I thought that would happen, the opposite would happen. And what's striking about your situation is that you're so strong. You're still standing in the midst of it. And I want to ask you, like, how did you find the strength to overcome the incredible grief and trauma that was inflicted on you?
Oh, wow. I've gone through different stages and different seasons for, so long. There was a time where I couldn't even look or even walk past any of my files, because it triggered all those feelings of grief and fear and shame, and how am I going to do this? I didn't want to look at any of the paperwork, but time and there would be times where I would just go into a depression, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to fight again. I have to try. I have to just try. And so I go through different
stages, and you get told them no a lot when you can repeatedly when you try to reach out to the Bar Association, which they'll never do anything. I mean, it would have to be a high-profile situation, I think. But I did get discouraged a lot, but a prayer, I would say, Hope. I mean, my daughter's name is Hope. I gave Hope says so much, and I remember naming her that, because everybody wanted me. Just so many people were like, they have this abortion mentality, and I was at a place where I did that in the past out of fear because I didn't know what to do, and I was ready to confront my fear and take responsibility. So things like that, just trying to find really my purpose as well, and asking myself, like, why is this happening? What am I supposed to learn? And I read. There are times I break down, but I go through different stages. I'll meet people like you that may help me to stay empowered. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. And I see you, and it's inspiring. It really is, to say, okay, if she can do it. Even your little thing, what was it you had that, the phone number thing, that was so brave. And I'm like, because my thing is I start thinking about, if I put that out there, what he's going to do to her, this, that, and the other. But at the same time, these are fears that I am projecting. And then if I project them, I can create my reality. And that's another thing I learned is I am the master of my own destiny. I can create. We are creators by design. Our thoughts, if I would change the way I think and stop believing the lies and ask myself, okay, what am I going to do about this situation? And how can I make lemonade out of lemons? This has got to be for a purpose, and try to focus on a solution, because I've learned how to stop, to really pay attention to my thinking, and that's helped me, and just, of course, God, and just searching spiritually as well. And I guess that's really empowered me. I think without God, because I've seen some miracles. I've gone through seen a lot of miracles as well, and I know that this is not in vain. And I don't know. That's all I really can say. I don't know. Sometimes I really am strong. Sometimes I'm not. So I grieve like anybody else. But there are times I feel like I don't have time to cry right now. I have to fight. And that's actually, the anger has given me focus at times too, where I'm like, I'm coming with a vengeance. I'm going to read. I'm going to file this, that, and the other. But I don't know.
Yeah, you bring up really good points. It's because people ask me that too, like, how do you get through this, and how are you so strong? And I tell them, I said, it's by allowing the grief. You cannot only push the grief away, but then at the same time, you cannot stay stuck in the grief either. So I explain it as just like the weather. Sometimes it rains, and if you just let it pour, then it comes through you and it flows through you quicker. And then once then you have to move through it, right? It's the important thing is not to be attached to the grief. Just allow it to come through, and then transform. But the anger comes usually after the grief, right? So once you get to the anger, that's actually an energy, and you can use that energy and transform it into something constructive and say, okay, now what are my options? I can do A, B, and C. Even if you're just like writing them down and say, these are the things that I can practically do to try and improve the situation. So every time you have this anger, you just move it around and use the energy of it to push it out into a constructive plan and an action plan, and get to action. And then once you feel tired of that, because obviously your energy is doesn't last forever. It's not a freight train that just keeps going. So you also have to you have to switch to different gears, and also nurture yourself and bring in supportive people in your life and supportive information in your life to feed your soul with positive information that keeps you going. And faith is really important. Faith and hope are two crucial elements to nurture, So and I see that in you too. Your faith is like really, really strong, and that's what we need to keep going on. We can help each other with that too. That's why the Facebook groups are really important too. It's a place to cry and share your grief, but it's also a place to support each other and help each other. And it doesn't always have to only be judicial help, It can just be hearing each other and allowing each other to vent, Just knowing that you're not the only one going through it is really, really important. And just for the listeners that don't know about how many moms are going through this, there's an estimated 2 million mothers in the United States alone that are going through this as we speak. And that's a whole lot of moms. And I hope that all the moms are going to be as brave as you are for sharing your story and coming out and making a blog and putting the awareness around this, because I believe that if we all did this, then we could actually achieve an overhaul of the system. I don't even believe in the word reform. I believe in an overhaul. It needs to be completely overthrown.
And I want to say this real quick. To overcome that fear, I have to confront it and shine the light on it. That's why I decided to expose it. And people have to learn how to get. The only way they're going to overcome that fear is to speak out about it, to make a blog and confront them. They are going to be afraid of. Who are they? Especially if you have nothing to lose, and
Exactly.
It takes time with your, spiritual development, but challenge yourself. I've had to.
Great points. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for being on the show today, and thank you for being courageous, for sharing your outrageous story. And I can only hope that that the tip that Amber gave you with the emergency motions, or any other information that people can contact you with, will reunite you with your children as soon as possible. That's my hope for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're such a blessing. It was by divine appointment that we even encountered each other in these circumstances, and I'm so grateful to God too, and for you and your show. And you and I are gonna stay friends. We're gonna stay in touch. So I look forward to working with you, and thank you again, and Amber. That's awesome. Thank you. What a blessing.
Thank you. Yes. And everyone who's listening, I hope you tune in again next week for another episode of Hell is for Children. Bye-bye, Jennifer. I'll see you around.
Lee.
Bye-bye.
Yes.